Sorry, what happened? Are we ready to go? Yeah. Okay. Islam was. Five on the left, two on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe. Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night and by day, to His holy prophet, noble Juali. Islam. Islam was Prophet warns all Muslims, governors, ordered to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Ali. Islam. To be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam. I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Juali. To the members of the Moor Science Temple of America. Islam. This is the instruction from your Prophet Noble Juali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you would be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I know Juali. And that's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see, but cannot see. Ears to hear, but cannot hear, lest they will be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving. And they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but would sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest. and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali.
Wow.
Islam. We have next week, we're going to be in Steel City, aka Hamilton, for our In the Park series. So we're going to get the email out. We'll get the email out for that. It's right near right after Burlington, right by the bridge there. There's a water park there that I can't remember the name right now, but we'll send out the email, and it's pretty much going to be 10:30 or so meet up, so we can start for 11 and have sort of a half a day out there.
So you're not going over the bridge?
Yeah, once you go over the bridge, it's like it's on your left right there, right along the water. But there's there's a couple different little parks. So we're at the last one. When you go to the end, right where the water park is. But we'll send out the email with the instructions and all that. Yeah, that'll be out today. And we also have the Mother's Appreciation Dinner that's supposed to be going up. If you check the archive wall, you'll see we've had 2 in the past, and this is the ongoing thing, just to make sure that Mother gets her little chill time, because they deserve it too. Do you have anything to add on that, Omar? With the dinner?
No, just something that more to this entity here that we're looking to reestablish. Every day should be Mother's Appreciation Day, right? So it's not like that shouldn't be at the forefront. We hope to achieve giving a little thanks for all the support. Mm-hmm. And we'll also be having a autumn equinox feast around the equinox, obviously. So further details of that, as well as that will be accompanied by a walk as well. So that's what we've got planned for next month.
So, the Canadian Human Rights Commission, June 2nd, 2020. This is statement: anti-Black racism in Canada. Time to face the truth. Set this up for these boys. Now we just want to get your perspective on the statement, so feel free to chime in. In light of the anti-racism protests taking place this week across the US, Canada, and the world, Marie-Claude Landry, Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission, released the following statement: it is time for all Canadians to acknowledge that anti-Black racism is pervasive in Canada. In fact, the belief that there is little to no racism in Canada is itself a barrier to addressing it. As millions of people around the world unite to speak out against the killing of George Floyd, many are grappling with grief, anger, and anxiety. The Commission extends its deepest sympathy to the family and friends of Mr. Floyd and his entire community. We are immeasurably saddened that all those who endure the effects of anti-Black racism may be newly traumatized by this most recent senseless tragedy. Anti-Black racism is not confined to the US. Many people of African descent in Canada feel threatened or unsafe every day because of color of their skin. Some fear the police officers charged with protecting them. We must question why Black people in Canada are more likely to be racially profiled whether by police when walking down the street, or store employees when shopping, or when being served in a restaurant. We must question why they are more likely to be targets of hate speech and hate crimes and are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. The roots of anti-Black racism and systematic discrimination in Canada runs deep. They are historically embedded in our society, in our culture, in our laws, and in our attitudes. They are built into our institutions and perpetuate the social and economic disparities that exist in everything from education to healthcare to housing and employment. Now is the time for all Canadians, but especially non-racialized Canadians, to listen, learn, and reflect on how white privilege and systematic racism contribute to injustice and inequality in this country. We need to look inwards and challenge our biases, fears, assumptions, and privilege. We need to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations. We must recognize and respect the leadership of voices from the Black community and learn from lived experiences of anti-Black racism. Racist comments and racist acts, no matter how subtle, must no longer be ignored or tolerated in Canada. Even the most subtle forms of racism contribute to the conditions that permit overt racism and violence to occur. When we are complacent, we are complicit. When we are silent, we are complicit. It is not enough to say that we embrace diversity and human rights as a foundation of our democracy. Racism violates human rights, whether conscious or unconscious, subtle or overt. It diminishes human dignity and erodes democracy. It is time for change. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., there comes a time when silence is betrayal. That time is now. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that? On what we just read?
What's that? What you're reading from that?
This is the Canadian Human Rights Commission statement on anti-Black racism in Canada. No. Well, we can see that they know, being that they're the Human Rights Commission. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say that it's what we were talking about before, which is the aspect of what this is all about, which is what we were saying is effort, from the perspective of speaking out being a mode of that. But yet again, maybe on a certain level, being maybe even yet again part of what they do, which is the misdirection. It's really not about speaking out, it's about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking out yet again, it's just like the marching. So, but underneath it is the energy system, which is the energy. That's what it's always been about. So what I had said to you before when I was listening to that other guy speak about how he attributed any of these movements success, and I coupled that with what I heard from the other night before about any of these things that are going to be successful, effort is going to need to be part of that.
Yeah, you want to give you the example of what gave you the eureka moment with the effort?
In terms of which one was in basketball?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was a good one.
There's two anecdotes that I've heard in basketball that really touched me. One of them I think was the name will come back to me. But he said, maybe it's Joe Dumars. It was maybe someone else. Anyways, he said, find a job that you love and you'll never work another day in your life. And the second one I heard last night, which was the gentleman was talking about these guys doing their thing, which is what life is about. And he was saying the one thing that we all have control of is how much effort you put into something. And I said to and I realized how profound that was, because effort is really the will, right? So whatever you put your effort into, you will get results. And he was obviously likening it to an activity in a basketball game, but I thought about that's what really life is about. That's what this movement's about. That's what was being said in that statement right there. But we also have to understand exactly what our goals are, where our effort needs to go, and also who's telling us what to do, right? Or how to do it. Those things should be that. So that's where it was. That effort is really the one thing that we have the ability to sort of control.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Anybody else got any thoughts?
Like effort, doing, it's like guiding.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. One of the things that they brought to the marginalized people of Canada is the question. Because remember where this is coming from. This is not coming from Trudeau or whatever. This is coming from the commission that deals with human rights in Canada. So as soon as they're talking human rights and they're talking to our people, know that that's a plea that they're making to them. That they're pleading to them to consider certain things. So they ask them, we must question why Black people in Canada are more likely to be racially profiled, whether by police when walking down the street, or store employees when shopping, or when being served in a restaurant. This is the Human Rights Commission talking. Now, the point that we're making is that they're saying the same thing that Moore's been telling people. Like why does stuff only happen to our people? How come it doesn't happen to anybody else? Only our people get this treatment? Right? Whether by police, so with our examples, we know that it's a totally different interaction with a highwayman as a Moor and as a Black guy. It's two different treatments, two totally different treatments.
With everybody, not just
right?
Everybody.
Right, but that's where I was going at with,
Yes.
because they brought up police and then they brought up store when shopping. Again, Moors going to any store and you're being a Moor in there, they're dealing with you different than how they deal with anybody else. Not follow you around to make sure that you're gonna put anything in your bag or anything like that. They're not even going there in their mind when they deal with Moors. So, you know, this is really a empowerment session for Moors to realize that this is what we get for our effort that we put in. That the Human Rights Commission is coming out and questioning these people on the position that they're taking. When we can tell you, we had phone conversations with MPP and people who are in the city or whatever, and they're not talking negative about the Moors like how you see people talking on YouTube or whatever. They're not telling us, you know, anti-government and we're sovereign citizens and what do you mean by that and all that stuff. They know exactly where we're coming from because we always deal with them from the perspective of human rights. We always deal with them from the perspective of this is about people's rights. This is not about we're trying to be something. And the brilliance of Holy Juali was putting nationality in what he was doing, which brought in the conversation of human rights. So when we're speaking as the people who know, right? You have to be empowered that, you know, this is a reality. Like, this is not a fiction. For people who are new, this is a actual reality. Please, brother, right? This is not a some you're here to join something because, you know, the organization and this is about bringing us back into our national standing as a people, because we've always been looked at as something that we're not. And then we go with the thing that, to the point where the Human Rights Commission is asking these people, why is it only happening to black people? Right? And again, we know that the people who are around the Human Rights Commission, right, when they're talking about the Human Rights Commission, they know that there's international law, there's certain things that govern society that everybody's bound to. Are they gonna stick to those things is a different thing depending on who you're dealing with, right? So just like with them having the power to violate certain things, right? Moors get away with more stuff than the people who don't have a status. Moors can do certain things and exercise in certain ways a lot more easier because of us dealing with this human rights perspective, not we're a color, or we're a place, or we're whatever. We're talking about being connected to a nation. And it's not something anti-government. Matter of fact, it's pro-government. If people who are talking no nationality, that's anti-government. That's really the corruption, right? Any other thoughts? You could throw those out.
Just the thought that you were saying getting away with something, I think that we should make sure that the distinction, and we did make it at the end, that the distinction is about exercising one's inalienable rights.
Right.
It's not the sort of slipping of something. Because ultimately what this really should be about is the equalizing of the transference or reestablishment of our government, which would come with a whole set of rules and all that kind of stuff, correct?
Right. Which, you know, we have divine constitution and bylaws, which are rules. We have Zodiac Constitution, which are rules. And these, we have the letters that we read every meeting, which are our rules. So everything is there for us to be what we're supposed to be. But none of that's happening if we're taking the position of we're some fiction. And this is what the Human Rights Commission is addressing to these same people who look just like Moors, but they don't want to call themselves Moors. They want to say that they're everything else. And they would never debate anybody else why they're not saying, why don't they debate Chinese, or why don't they say they're yellow? Why don't they don't fight them?
I would also say this, I would also say none of that matters to me. It's about my inalienable rights, unalienable rights to have the freedom that everyone's supposed to have. We're not getting that. And that has to be looked at, I think, with pure eyes at this point, when we see that this thing has been carrying on for so long. And I think that was the other thing, I think you touched on it with you were saying with your friends in the group, that we seem to have more division now than we've ever had, in a sense.
Yeah.
So when we talked about this before, they're just muddying the waters, right?
Right.
Before it was black and white, now it's black, green, blue, whatever, and the other sort of subtext to some group, right? You just add in an extra 50 different options.
None of which are the right options.
Absolutely, that just confuses you, right?
Yeah.
Remember when you only had 4 channels?
Yeah.
You watched the 4 different things, right? You have 1,000.
Now you got 1,000. You don't even know what to watch. We must question why they are more likely to be the targets of hate speech and hate crimes and are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. This is the Human Rights Commission asking them. Why? Why is it only these people? Being that they're the human rights people, they already have the answer. They already know that they can't give the answer because it's really up to the individual to recognize their right. All they can do is talk about it.
But as I say, even that is a misnomer too, from the perspective that we've been allowing them to have to define it, that we need something to define something that we already know is there.
Yeah.
We need the human rights tribunal to tell us that some shit's effed up. It's been effed up. Like, they don't have any power to begin with. They're keeping to tell us that really what it's about is us getting together, which is the one thing we can't seem to do, whatever that spell is. That's the problem. This is, you can't even nod a man up nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, feeling like you better, you know,
Yeah.
make sure that you're ready to lock.
Throw it out.
It's probably the material aspect of it all.
Say that again?
The spell is the material aspect of it all.
Right.
Well, 100%. Yet we know that. I was saying about this today, whether this was all a dream, all the aspect of trying to get something. There's nothing to get, and yet, is the perception that I'm having. You seem to all be sharing the same perspective that because really I have everything I need right now, and yet I don't. And yet what they put out there, which is strange, is they keep you wanting other stuff.
Right.
If you notice that, if it was about being, see that I think is where you have an interesting point too, because if it was about being satisfied, all of us have what we need, really, right now. Because if not, then you can go out to get it. But interesting enough, there's got to be wanting that other thing, which they put out there that purport to have in that aspect, and you need to get it, but they never give you the venue to be able to get it. They keep pushing that venue on you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think about this, they're always telling you about the lottery. You notice that? They're always telling you whether someone's won the lottery or not. Why? Why do I want to know that? Because they're trying to hook you on this dream. Absolutely. But we as a people, but every other people has been able to sort of get around that and then created the wealth that they needed. That's the answer. The answer is not to go to them, and then you have it.
So, any other thoughts? Good one.
When these people are looking at, say, black people, right? They look at a national census, like, system, a data system, right? So my thought on this is, for the national movers in Canaanland, is there a time when we're going to put our membership group into that census database? So when these people are looking, at least they can see that some of us are not calling ourselves black. So at least they have something to say, look at these folks, right? These are free people. So you know what I mean?
The only issue with that is that that's again their venues. So you know, if we say we're more as recognized by their license, we're still compromised, right? If we're more as recognized by their census, right? If they're doing the counting and they're counting more in there, because they're doing the counting, now they have jurisdiction.
Everyone sign this book?
So then you could probably make up your own census, right?
Say again?
Make up our own census for them, and then just like when they make up theirs, you could say, hey, here we are.
But that's where it comes into town hall and membership forms, nationality cards with you know, attendance book. To go ahead, look.
I would say this. It comes out when we say it's Moorish Day. I was using this analogy to someone else. You see how when the Raptors won, you see those crowds? Mm-hmm. If we said it was Moors Day and that kind of crowd came out, you think we need to define anything to anyone? If we were a nation for a basketball team, you know, isn't that stop? We stop being a nation? Like, that just came to me now. Hold on, we became a nation at that point for a basketball team. That's how messed up we are.
Indian Army too.
And then have us denationalize it saying we the North. It's a madness. Because it's crazy. It was a part of your plan. You guys look at it, it's in your Bible. It's all the revelations coming true right now.
Yeah.
The rapture, all these, the rapture was made. It's just happening now. There's so much little things that's being thrown at us that we don't even realize. You see how we just brought up the thing about the raptors, and then everyone's saying that they're national like that now. Why did the raptors have to make to do that? Because it happened at a certain time point in life that they know is what's going on with the universe.
You're absolutely right. So as I was stating with the brother, it's about cosmology. This was the time. That's also my COVID here.
Exactly.
So we have to understand that in labor in the state. But remember, what in that statement of it, what we've done is stop realizing that it's like a ball of energy. You gotta let them control you. You can take it to do what you want. They have to sort of put the throttle on it. Just because, and I told Fugu this. I looked up in the sky and I saw this alignment of stars that I'd never seen. Right?
It's here right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to show you. They say the world is going through different. That the world is standard is not really going through. The world is moving through space.
Yeah.
I mean, our constellation, they've been studying them since the beginning.
Well, remember, it was our study, so don't take, one of the things we have to continue to do is
Yeah,
remember, it's our stuff that they have sort of convinced us that we, right, yeah. But that sometimes the energy too, right?
Hi, Boca.
Do we need more chairs?
No, we should be all right. Any other comments? Another one of these. Well, so even with what the more was talking about just now with their census and certain things, when you look at what they're engaging in the democracy, which we can't really be in like that, and they're never going to say republic. They're not even going to bring it to attention like that because they know that they lose all that democratic position or power that is the only power that they could really use, right? So it's really about us doing our self-governance with regard to certain things. That if we're doing it for ourselves, then it's not that they're not needed. We just don't need them. You know, another thing when we were talking about speaking with the MPPs and stuff like that, like all of them have, the ones that we spoke to had nationalities. Like they weren't black guys or, you know what I mean, some type of fiction, right? And speaking with them from the perspective of national and human rights and things, they relate, they get what we're saying, right? Unlike our people who we try to talk to them and you can't even convince them that it's important, you know? And it's really about the self-recognition more so than their recognition. Because once we recognize ourselves, then they'll recognize. But it's not gonna happen till we recognize it ourselves. So like when we were saying that with the whole thing with them being a human rights commission. So because they're commissioned with regard to this thing of human rights, and they're expressing that, you know, there's a problem with whatever and against these certain people, they're making a plea to these people. It's another entity making the same argument that the Moors are making to try to get them to wake up.
I see a thing is, what do you call it, magazine here, the statute, the reason for taking them down,
The reason for what?
the statute.
Okay.
The reason for taking them down, the statute.
Okay, yeah.
And then coincide, I see it in this premature thing, talking about the birthright promise. That's something I never hear.
Yeah,
Why are they talking about
right.
birthright promise? And these are some stuff I used to talk to with my mother.
Yeah,
She don't understand.
there's just the things that's gonna make it connect.
Right. And then people will see these things, but they don't even recognize it. Oh, they don't even see it. Actually, at this place I went to, the secretary saw it, but she threw it in the garbage. I saw it, and I was going to ask them for it. And I went back the next day. She said it's in the garbage. She threw it out. I said, that's what we're lynch talking about. You don't see what's at the front, but at least look to see the stuff at the top.
Yeah.
You know, read.
Had anything from them, put it in a book.
Yes.
So that's the whole point. You know what I mean? Them not being able to comprehend even that they're in error. You know what I mean? And then being told that they're in error and not doing anything to correct the error. Just keep going with the error. Right? Now there was another one from June 16th, and this was from the Parliamentary Black Caucus, the Canada version of the Black Caucus. The Parliamentary Black Caucus, established in 2015, is composed of parliamentarians from the Senate and the House of Commons who are either Black Canadians or allies of Black Canadians. We meet regularly to bring forward discussion and advocate issues that are important to Black communities across Canada. It is only fitting that this caucus was formed during the United Nations Decade of People of African Descent. It's all going to be an African caucus then.
Absolutely.
If they're of African descent and all that stuff, then there should be an African caucus, not a Black caucus. And the
Slavic caucus.
Oh, you know what? I was just going to say, I remember that was something I remembering to tell you about too, this whole Masai Jerry thing.
Yeah.
So they made a statement about how Masai is saying that, you know, the reason he thinks he was treated the way he was because he was Black, but because, you know, as an African descendant, he was able to sort of reach these sort of heights. I thought to myself that the hypocrisy and the sort of and the duality is evident in everything.
Yeah.
Because the Black is the deaf. You got to talk to someone, right?
Yeah. And then also remember that it's the United Nations Decade of People of African Descent. And the United Nations been told these people that everybody has right to a nationality. So who they fooling with the Black Caucus? Only the incompetent people who call themselves Black. Nobody else is fooled by this stuff. Because you can't claim people of African descent but call yourself Black.
You can, but then you're going to be exposed to certain things as well as it puts you in a certain jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, so yeah, you can if you want to, but it's not a move that you should make.
But ultimately, here's where I say the disconnect is. They're not telling you it's the wrong move, and they're not getting rid of the wrong move.
Right.
Which means, by omission, they're involved in making sure that you make the wrong move.
Several brutal acts of racism, and then what we'll do is after every paragraph we'll stop, then you get your thoughts. Several brutal acts of racism caught on video came to light in the past few weeks for everyone to witness. They represent only a very thin slice of the racism that Black Canadians experience in their daily lives. From daily microaggressions to the rarer but tragically fatal hate-filled acts as seen in those videos, many non-Black Canadians are becoming conscious of the systematic and insidious nature of racism in our country. Recent public demonstrations across Canada, as well as online campaigns, have illustrated a rapidly developing attempt to understand the causes and manifestations of this pernicious and widespread phenomenon. Now, this is the Black Caucus talking. The members of the Parliamentary Black... Yeah, but the other one short. The members of the Parliamentary Black Caucus are heartened to see so many of their fellow citizens taking to the streets to peacefully express their desire for Canadian society to stamp out racism. However, to rid our society of racism would require concrete actions by all levels of government to begin to make a difference. Any thoughts?
Just that pernicious is like the most evil of the evil. So that's why when you use that word, I remember about 10, 15 years ago, stumbling on that word and looking it up. And then, you know, it's like a spell that they cast me as well.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Something that deceives emotions.
We applaud various governments for their efforts to date to improve the lives of Black Canadians. Nova Scotia has long led and remains a leader on this file. Ontario and Quebec should restore their economic and social programs that were directed toward their Black communities. The federal government made historic investments for Black Canadians in the previous 2 budgets, yet more must be done. How much more really needs to be done? How much more millions do they need to get to fix this problem? That is an ever-going problem. Right? Social injustice for these particular people who just happen to classify. I'll just pull that door. Oh, no, sorry, he's going back. The whole
Justices thing?
the whole idea of having something happen to you and it's an injustice would mean that your next option is to seek some type of redress on the people who perform these injustices against you. And if the position is never to do that, only march around or whatever, then these people already know that it's a done game and we're just sitting at the table just staring at each other because the game's over.
I do have one question. It was talking about Nova Scotia being a place where they saw what?
We applaud various governments for their efforts to date to improve the lives of Black Canadians. Nova Scotia has long led and remains a leader on this file.
That's a very deceitful statement right there. Because there's been a lot of treaties in that area, but each one was done with a quote unquote nation, which was actually clans. So none of them were standing on black color or anything like this, right?
Mhm.
So to tie them in with some sort of, it's very deceiving. I don't understand that statement. I feel like it's willfully deceitful unless you understand your history.
Well, this is what we're talking about, because if you know anything about Nova Scotia, that's where the Africville was. And that could have been all tied to that. Now they're establishing that as the first community here, creating a certain weird jurisdiction that they know doesn't exist. That could be, remember, it's their story.
Yeah, but that's newer than a lot of the treaties that were signed.
Say it again?
That's newer than a lot of the little fragmented treaties that they signed.
Yeah, but remember, these things are only 40, 50 years old. You keep looking.
Understood.
That's why I say that we mix up the fact that when they're talking about anything to do with history, it's us. No matter what they talk about, back to 1850s, that's us. The flag's only 150 years old. You know what I mean? So what my granny's 90, so what's going on back then? You know what I mean? In terms of that, right? It means there was only one generation missing before, and who knows what granny knew, right?
So that's what I say about that, that already it's very deceitful.
Yeah, but again, too, remember that this is coming from the Black Caucus people who are a fraud.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to talk. They're gonna have to talk a certain way to appease the ones that they're looking to say, oh yeah, the Black Caucus said whatever for our people. So yeah, we're gonna go with what they say. When you can just read the UN Declaration stuff and use that.
You mean rights of child?
The rights of a child, you can use that as far as if you're gonna stand for something. To have a whole body of people created in 2015, and then these people are incredible people, right? When there's been things prior to them that's talking more sense than a lot of this, right? We urge all governments to act immediately. This is not a time for further discussion. The Afro-Canadian community has spoken for many years and is no longer interested in continued consultation or study. Extensive reports and serious proposals already exist. What is needed is the implementation of these proposals and the dedication of adequate financial resources to do so effectively. The reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic proves that governments can act quickly and ably in crisis. Black Canadians are in a state of crisis. It is time to act. Words and symbolic gestures, while important, are not enough. Now, wouldn't setting up a parliamentary Black caucus be a symbolic gesture? Because they should have been had one of these if this is where it's at. If a Black caucus is where it's at for Black people to get whatever it is, then they should have been had this implemented. They should.
Sitting around.
Right. Executive summary. To minimize the consequences of systematic racism, and the Parliamentary Black Caucus calls on all levels of government in Canada. Measure the pervasiveness of systematic discrimination through collection of race-based data. Assist Black Canadians in providing economic prosperity to all through measures to support Black-owned run businesses. Eliminate the barriers to access to justice and public security for Black Canadians and Indigenous people. Make our public administration more effective and resilient by ensuring it actually reflects the diversity of the public it serves, and recognize and support the artistic and economic contributions of Black Canadian culture and heritage.
It's not gonna happen. Keep bringing up their status. I like how they threw in Indigenous in there.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, they say Black, but they say Indigenous.
Yeah.
And Canadian and Indigenous.
Yeah.
So they know the Indigenous is not Canadian. Trying to, yeah, I like how they do it.
Yeah. right?
I think that also, you know, when you look at that, I think that that's even their next level stuff. Because remember, they're the black, the bleak. And so what they're doing is they're tying the bleak, the black back to the indigenous, which is what, when this all falls apart, they're going to be. And so if we've now signed on to the fact that they're indigenous, then we've just written them right back into this, haven't we? We're going to have to be very careful a lot of times. You see, what do they say when the lawyer sees him up, his lips moving, he's lying? It's the same with this stuff. Oh yeah, no. How can you tell a lawyer's lying? His lips are moving?
Hassan Shabazz, Heroes of Al-Islam in America, Understanding the Works and Mission of Noble Drew Ali, Sharif Abdul Ali. Page 23, Elijah Muhammad on Sovereignty. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the preacher of freedom, justice, and equality to the American so-called Negroes, the lost and found members of the Asiatic Black nation from the tribe of Shabazz, made famous the term do for self. In the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's monumental book, Message to the Black Man in America, he writes, "There is no need for us millions throughout the country spending our money for the joy and happiness of others. As a result, as soon as we are thrown out of a job, we are back at the doors of the white people begging for bread and soup. How many clothing shops do we operate in the country? Very few, yet all of us wear clothes. Who made our clothes for us? Who sold them to us? We have a few grocery stores, but this is not enough to feed 30 million black people in America. Should we not have clothing factories making clothes for ourselves? Should we not have more stores to sell our people everything that they want or they need? The slave master has given you enough education to go and do for self, but this education is not being used for self. It is even offered back to the slave masters to help them to keep you in a dependent people to them for support. Let us unite every good that is in us for uplifting of the American so-called Negroes to the equal of the world's independent nations. Ask for a start for self, and American white people, I believe, are willing to give us a start if they see you and I are willing to do for self. It would remove from them not only the worry of trying to give jobs and schools to lazy people, but also would get them honor and sincere friendship all over the Asiatic world, and God himself would prolong their time on the earth. We must stop relying upon the white man to care for us. We must become an independent people. So-called Negroes should separate yourselves from the slave master, pool your resources, education, and qualifications for independence. Stop forcing yourselves into places where you are not wanted. Make your own neighborhood a decent place to live. Rid yourselves of the lust, wine, and drink, and learn to love self and your kind before loving others. Unite to create a future for yourself. Build your own homes, schools, hospitals, and factories. Do not seek to mix your blood through racial integration. Stop buying expensive cars, fine clothes, shoes, before being able to live in a fine home. Spend your money among ourselves. Build an economic system among yourselves. Protect your women. No black man feels good by nature. Your educators, your Christian ministers should all stop preaching integration. The most foolish thing an educator can do is to preach integration. It shows the white man that you want to be white. Educators should teach our people of the great history that was theirs before they were brought to America. Our children should be trained in our own schools, not dropped into schools of the enemy, where they are taught that whites would forever be their world leaders. Any thoughts on that? Now again, just like with the
Who said, who, somebody specifically saying for us not to enter virtual?
yeah, that was Nation of Islam.
Quote from someone, or
Yeah, Elijah Muhammad.
Elijah Muhammad?
Yeah, Nation of Islam.
So, do we, okay, the 400 years of slavery, or bondage, do we know anything of any treaty or any personal, like any grants were given to them to do that? Do we know that? Do we know of any like, let's say, we don't have to know, I don't know if it's in written or wherever it is, if this came from us. That 400 years, why was it only 400 years that we were given to rule and whatever they had to do? Why was that?
Well, if 2019 was 400 years, since I was in high school, they were talking about 400 years of slavery.
Yeah, because they change it every single time. They go A, B, B, C, but they're all based it off of Christ. These last days, they're based off of the day when Christ was born or died, basically. I mean, so when was this 400 years implicated for them to do that and rule?
No, it's not. It's not.
More than 400 years. It's been. I think it was more than. I think, and to what I'm really calculating in my resources that I'm getting from, it's been more than 400 years. Obviously, because
of bondage
dates and stuff they give us, right? We believe it's from Christ that the calendar started, a certain calendar, because they changed the calendar.
Right. Yeah. Before Christ, after Christ. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even, I don't want to get too deep into things, but even before Christ, they had dated documents in history and time.
Yeah.
So how comes all of these Bible
scriptures,
not even the characters that they had in the Bible, how come none of them had a last name? Because people date them back in time to see if they're paying taxes, to see if they're doing all sorts of things. So we have to look at everything as a whole. So they were given certain time to do certain things. Who gave them that power to do that? And that's what we need to get back and look at and figure out in life too. I hear you say Elijah Muhammad. I know I got a little bit off topic with the interracial thing, but everything intertwined, we have to know where it all came from and how the system got demonized.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the demonization of it was what you're talking about, them changing the calendar.
Exactly.
That once they change the time, once they've made themselves have control over the time, then we already know that things are going to be distorted.
Right. So whoever told them this interracial thing to happen from day one was all set up for today's time frame to happen. I mean, the whole new world order to take up that.
No, remember that when they say interracial, the concept that Nation of Islam is speaking from is that there's black people and white people, which is a fiction.
Right.
The concept is human family.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how, right? So
when they say interracial, do they mean something, a race other than the human race? Is that what we are really into?
no, they're speaking from they're speaking from the perspective of black people, white people, right? Which is an illusion in itself. because those aren't people. You can't talk interrace, because there's no such thing as races like that. There's one race, the human family, right? That's it. That's the only race. So there's no racism really, right? But when you look at the thing of who are the parties, right? There's two really. There's high concentration of melanin, and then there's recessive. Right? It's the same thing in nature. You got albino alligators and whatever. Right? There are certain animals that they're just pale. You don't got, that's just what it is. It's something in nature. It's not a thing of, oh, those people are, because they don't have, they're the devil or whatever. Like, nobody's looking at the pale alligator as that's the devil alligator. Yeah, the pale pig is the devil pig, and then the black pig is the god pig.
I hear you saying, basically, trying to get at who are we interracial with? Are we?
They're talking about European. They're talking about European.
They couldn't be talking about us and the Chinese and us. I mean,
right. Well, that's why we said that there's only two, because Chinese are us too. You know what I mean? So you're talking about modern Europeans. Because even when you say Europeans, we're talking about us. Irish are us. You know what I mean? The Danes and whoever are us. It's not some pale people. So again, which why you can't really do the interracial thing, because even the things that they're claiming is European is really us. You know what I mean? Right. Like it's not as if there's a separation. Like if let's just say they're talking about interracial stuff, right? If he dropped down or had a seizure or whatever like that, and the European ambulance guy showed up, he should not accept the assistance. If it's like that. But reality is not like that, because that's some BS. Because you're gonna deal with who could perform the task. You know what I mean? If it's only a European, right? Right? It's like the Klansman who went and then she had to go get an operation with a black doctor. He said, forget that stuff. Like, you're going to operate on me, nigga. Because what are you going to do? Right?
So sum up everything I'm saying. More to add to what you're just saying. Does anybody in here remember the word test tube babies?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave it. All right.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it.
But keep in mind, though, right? But keep in mind that even if the baby came from a test tube, you're not gonna put it in a box in the garbage.
I mean that.
You're still gonna take care of it,
Right.
even if it came from a test tube. You're still gonna give it what it needs in order to exist.
And even as we clone and do other things, we still haven't isolated, we still haven't created completely of ourselves. So the test tube is still going to be whose DNA.
Exactly. Where did that DNA come from? What makes slice with it bring it forward?
So that's what I'm saying. Even if we go to somebody brought up Yakuza or whatever, right? And then they're taking genes of different species that aren't human to make a being, and then call it, people or whatever, right? You're still not gonna put it in the garbage, put it in the garbage bag, and throw it in the river, right? You see in other cultures where the offspring is born deformed or whatever like that, and they literally cast them out. And they don't have a chance to live. They're living on the street as a baby.
Never mind the form, they'll do it to girls in some
Or females, right? You know what I mean? So when we get into the thing of identifying the two races, and then taking well, you know, we didn't come from the caves because we built the pyramids, and we did that's the same stuff, right? That lower superiority, whatever, that have us in the position right now where we're on the bottom. Because we took advantage when we were on the top. We thought we had this stuff locked down because we built some pyramids and we know aliens and all that stuff. No, you don't have nothing locked down. You're not supposed to be creating other species and stuff like that. Like, what are you talking about? You're not supposed to be, you know, doing all this stuff to the planet. You think you're doing something, mining all this stuff or whatever. That's our stuff. But everything has its time. Right? You think you're not going to get judgment for that? You think every paper that you dropped on Mother Earth, you're not going to get that back somehow?
What do you feel with fossil fuel? Dinosaurs. How you draw so much blood from the earth? It's called fossil fuels. How is that possible?
Yeah, because Earth creates everything. Right? Well, why? Because she's a mother. Right? They're gonna try. If anybody has any questions, you can throw those out.
Come back on what they said. Remember how we're doing the walking up the whole trail and we see the trees, and we mentioned how the trees, like the trees are hurt because they have these little lumps in them. You know, and like yeah, like Mother Nature's hurt. You know, it's thought of that. When you mentioned that.
And there's lots of them with those lumps when you check it out,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, the story is that like true, factual?
It's when there has to be some type of reality to it, based on the modern Europeans being so different. You know what I mean? That's just that's not natural occurrence. The natural occurrence is the albino that comes from us.
Yeah.
That looks like European blonde hair or whatever like that. But they have our features. But the European that they say caveman or whatever, that's a whole different evolutionary process. Right? You know? But yeah, it's a reality.
We have America talks about certain things like that too.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to you know the disagreements that we see going on with our people. These people don't get along with that people because of whatever. That's ancient. That's not something that's just happening right now, right? So those people who did the Yakub were those were the disagreeable ones. Those are the ones who didn't want to follow the orders. They want to do their own stuff. Then they go and they create Frankenstein running all over the place doing madness. They can't control it, and now they're pretending like they didn't do nothing. I don't know what you're talking about, you know, white people, black people, and all this, right? Because they messed up. They didn't contain the virus. If you want to look at it like that.
Timing off what you said. In that same book of America, it said that the Egyptians made an error. They tried to make, but they could make a body, but they couldn't make a soul.
Right.
So they decided to put an angel spirit or
still do it.
or a devil spirit into it. And that's again what you have to do. Like you made gods, earthly gods.
And then the people who created them start getting caught up in how they thought and how they ate and how they whatever, and then adopted their stuff, lost their stuff, and now we're here. We don't know who we are.
God doesn't mingle with his creations. Put something in place for them that's a good responsibility.
burns a bush sometimes.
Yeah,
Send a message or two.
Right? Yeah.
So
There's a reality to it.
that the story came from the guy from Nation of Islam, the Arab that brought it to Elijah Muhammad.
Oh, I'm Fard
Yeah,
Muhammad.
Muhammad. Yeah.
No, but remember, so this ancient Egypt, that ain't no new, that's not no new stuff.
He just calls it something
You know
different.
what I mean? It's just a different name of the same thing, because they have to try to sell this idea that they know something.
Oh, okay.
So he's calling it something different, and you're thinking that, you know, it's just like when the Hebrews say Moses and they really mean Amos, a pharaoh of Egypt. They're not talking about something Hebraic. You know what I mean? So it's all part of the code that people do after, because you have to. We were talking about this in one of the lives the other day, that there's the truth and the falsehood. Right? Drew Ali presented to us that there's going to be a time when the truth and the falsehood is going to be strangely mixed. And then that's where it comes into people say, well, you know what, eat the fish, spit out the bones and all that. Because that's just what it is. You're not getting your fish with no bones in it. That's just, you know what I mean? Yeah. Right now, you know, in some manipulative process, you can get some seeds without watermelon, so you don't have to be spitting out seeds all the time. But eventually, when it's time to get watermelons next year and you have no seeds, you realize that, dog, that's not my idea. Yeah. Unless that's the plan. I have seeds and nothing, so nobody can grow anything.
Only when I say.
Right?
Only when
We
I
need to give us.
No? Right. Which again goes back to us, you know, getting a certain perspective of this information. Because to get it from the wrong perspective in this day and time, that could cost you more than what you think you're going to lose. Right? Like we were talking about earlier, that the new mark of the beast is the mask. The mask is the mark of the beast.
So when you do that, get that from.
No, that's just what it is. Like when they say mark of the beast, and then people are looking, let me check the back of your neck or whatever like that.
Or like conforming to the European style. I always thought that was the mark of the beast.
Yeah, that's a perspective. Yeah. You know, the mark of the beast is layered now. Yeah. Mark of the beast isn't just barcode at the back of your neck. You know, mark of the beast is your phone, depending on which one you got, Android, whatever like that. Is different marks of the beast. Go in the wallet, any card, health card, this card, got chip in it, whatever.
You said a couple weeks ago, ATMs don't have cash in them.
Yeah.
Right? So now they require you to use your card, so they can track you every time you do a tap.
They're giving out 5G.
A lot of ATMs don't even have like 20s and 50s. Like you want like 200 or you can't get it.
I think that's actually a response, because if you go to certain places, they only want cash. That's the
But those are the people who are working under the table and stuff.
I think those are also the people holding on to that last level.
Yeah.
Last level
They're
is
trying to keep that.
cash.
Yeah.
Another thing is, it's the majority of the smart cities that don't accept cash. Like,
Yeah, anyone that.
I went to Waterloo yesterday, and nowhere accepts cash. They only want debit or Visa.
Yeah, we have to also see the things from where they're at too. Waterloo is one of the last places to be given its phase 3, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So there's still that paranoia level, which was there, sort of in that section. Huh? I thought it was Peel and those areas that all over to the.
No, what are those countries?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Peel region and all those guys?
No, Peel region is not.
No, I know it's not. But they were Windsor, Essex. I thought they would mention those names. Those were some of the last ones that were. No, you said no. I have to check.
I'll work with it.
Okay.
But what I noticed out there though is the whole accepting of the pandemic and the rules is strictly enforced out there. Seriously enforced out there. Like certain places you can't even enter the building without a mask unless it's healthy.
I had someone follow me, 3 people follow me to Costco yesterday. I was wearing a mask, I put it over this ear. Excuse me, and I just kept on moving, I didn't hear anything. Sorry?
And that was
No, yeah, just around my neck, actually, in this area. And, eventually, they just stopped because I wasn't gonna stop. I'm wearing it. I'm following all the rules. It's on my body, it's physically on my body. And they couldn't argue against what I said, so.
Unless you can't help Chinese, Indian, they didn't cover their whole body, their whole life, and they still have the pandemic, the biggest outbreak. All masks and see, so
I think a fashion thing in Asia, right?
Huh?
The mask was like almost a fashion thing in Asia for a while.
The
Mask been on.
No, there are definitely concepts to it, but under what this has, I was thinking about this now. We've been under this mask thing for the last 5 months now. 5 months, they started for 2 weeks, and they still haven't stopped anything yet. I mean, this thing is, you know what I mean, and then they're having members of 30 or 40 people that they're still running you around, and you start looking at you walk into a building, you got central air running, then you're in trouble. All the doors that you touch, all that kind of stuff. What they're saying can't be what it is.
Based on what they were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. This is strictly about control. You listen to this morning. There's a few ways to get it: power, deception, and distraction. They're deceiving you and they're distracting you. Well, this is a 3-pronged thing. They're deceiving you, they're distracting you. That's the George Floyd stuff. And then they're using power.
Well, it's the same as with the market of the beast, when I went to get ice cream, gelato yesterday, and people that were coming into the establishment behind me they refused to come in and left because I went in without a mask, myself and my child. And so they chose not to have dessert that day.
What I was saying is to prove to that sort of subconscious, unconscious stuff that's going on now that, I mean, as I said, I was battling it then too, but the issue is, I don't know, anyways. The bigger issue is us, right? This is yet again distraction.
The last thing to say about the mask, you guys really study the mask and look what they're made of and the process that makes them. A virus is a microscopic thing. Most viruses are man-made because they don't have it. So the mask, they cannot protect you from microscopic. When debris, dust, they can't protect us from a microscopic virus because it's made from nanofiber. It's not woven material or anything like that. And you have to look what nanofibers are and what they use to make these masks. It's called like melt below in the process. I mean, you get deep into that again. So what I'm saying, everything has a trickle effect. You can't leave nothing out.
It could also be a people too, right? They could even use a mask as a vehicle because once they're conditioning your mind to wear this mask, they could use it as a vehicle.
As I said, the mask is being marketed. They, as you said, they use different things, not just one thing. Because everybody's, from day one, everybody was very about shit and this and that. So they're not going to use just that. They're using any little thing that not occur. Yeah, but most people just have the time to research and stuff like that. But you're going on daily activities and not being distracted by this or that.
Yeah, some more?
To paraphrase the sister from last week, now everyone can smell their own mouth.
I know. Still lying.
We'll take a chapter out of our Mysteries of the Silent Brotherhood. Probably go a couple chapters, we got some time. Chapter 6. Yahshua, presented with his camel, goes to Lahore where he abides. A caravan of merchantmen was journeying through the Kasmar Valley as Yahshua passed that way. And they were going to Lahore, a city of the land, the 5-stream land. The merchantmen had heard the prophet speak, had seen his mighty works in Leh, and they were glad to see him once again. And when they knew that he was going to Lahore and then across to Sind through Persia and further west, and that they had no beast on which to ride, they freely gave him a noble Bactrian beast, well saddled and equipped. And Yahushua journeyed with the caravan. And when he reached Lahore, a Jainin and some other Brahmic priests received him with delight. A Jainin was the priest who came to Yahshua in the nighttime in Benares many months before and heard his words of truth. And Yahshua was a Jainin's guest. He taught again many things, revealed to him the secret of the healing art. He taught him how he could control the spirits of the air, the fire, the water, and the earth, and explained to him the secret doctrine of forgiveness and blotting out of sin. One day a Jainin sat with Yahushua in the temple porch. A bank of wandering singers and musicians passed before the court to sing and play. Their music was most rich and delicate. And Yahushua said, Among the hybrid people of the land, we have no sweeter music than these unclothed children of the wilderness bringing here to us. From whence this talent and this power? In one short life, they surely could not gain such grace of voice, such knowledge of the laws of harmony and tone. These people are not young. 1,000 years ago would not suffice to give them such divine expressiveness and such purity of voice and touch. Men call them prodigies. There are no prodigies. All things result from natural law. 10,000 years ago, these people mastered harmony. In days of old, they trod the busy thoroughfares of life and caught the melody of birds and played on harps of perfect form. And they have come to gain and learn still other lessons from the varied notes of manifest. These wandering people from a part of heaven's orchestra and in the land of perfect things, the very angels will delight to hear them play and sing. And Yahushua taught the common people of Lahore. He healed their sick and showed them the way to rise to better things by helping others. He said, we are not rich by what we get and hold. The only thing we keep are those we give away. If we would live a perfect life, give forth our life in service for our kind and for the form of life, that men esteem the lower forms of life. But Yahushua could not tarry longer in Lahore. He bade the priests and other friends farewell. Then he took his camel and went on his way towards Sind. Islam. Any thoughts?
Well, it's just breaking down again the process of life.
These people are not young. 1,000 years ago would not suffice to give them such divine expressiveness and such purity of voice and touch. Men call them prodigies. There are no prodigies. All things result from natural law.
was just to say that we are all on this journey doing the same things that we've been doing for generations, and we affect ourselves.
Any other thoughts?
And we also all have a calling. The journey is generational. It's beyond this plane as well.
And then the more Science Temple, Holy Temple of Science was that missing link. So that missing link is now there, so now it's up to us if that link is there now, right? And we gotta make that link.
10,000 years ago, these people mastered harmony. In days of old, they trod the busy thoroughfares of life and caught the melody of birds and played on harps of perfect form. And they have come again to learn still other lessons from the varied notes of manifest. So it's constant learning. There's no, you're at the end of the road, you studied enough. The more we get information, especially the right information, the easier it's going to be to accept certain realities that we've been conditioned to not accept, right? And again, going back to the thing that Jwali told us to study, and this is what, if 10,000 years ago they mastered harmony, and again they're still here to learn lessons, then there's no real end to learning, right? Just like Brother Omar saying that even when you make the transition, you're still learning. Even when you get to the other work that you have to do, you're going to be learning there. And a lot of what's going on there is going to be what it is that you laid down here.
Also, the moment that you think that you have all the knowledge that you could possibly have, that's the moment that you begin to go backwards. You should never feel full.
The comments?
Well, if we knew it all, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
You know
that
what I
too.
mean? If you come back so that you can do whatever work, learn whatever lesson you have to learn, and we just keep incarnating, you know, which is interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many people who, from a Christian background will tell you, no, it's only one time we're here type of thing. But this is, you know, from these readings and also from the Bibles, we have to understand that a lot of this stuff is symbolic. Even when they talk about harmony, talking about the law of harmony, you know what I mean? These are all conditions, and not a lot of the people, most of the people as well, had to do with conditions and circumstances.
Any thoughts?
Now, there is also the lesson of Melchizedek and Moses, and at the end of that journey, Melchizedek looked at Moses as they watch a bird sit from a pond, and he says, all the godly knowledge that I have and all the godly knowledge that you have from Allah, he says, is but the amount that sit that the bird took from the pond. So,
Yeah. Chapter 10. The meeting of the seen sages to make laws for the coming age for the nations of the earth. Now when the sages were refreshed, they opened up the book of life and read. They read the story of the life of man and all of his struggles, losses and gains. And in the light of past events and deeds, they saw what would be best for him in coming years. They knew the kind of law and precept suited to his estate. They saw the highest Allah ideal that the race could comprehend. Upon the 7 postulates, these sages were to formulate the law of life of the coming age, that souls may rest. Now Mengski was the oldest sage. He took the chair of chief and said, man is not far enough advanced to live by faith. He cannot comprehend the things his eyes see not. He yet is a child, and during all the coming age must be taught by pictures, symbols, rites, and forms. This God must be a human God. He cannot see Allah by faith, and he cannot rule himself. The king must rule, the man must serve. The age that follows this will be the age of man, the age of faith. In that blessed age, the human race will see without the aid of carnal eyes, will hear the soundless sound, will know the Spirit Allah. The age we enter is the preparation age, and all the schools must be designated in a simple way that man may comprehend. And man cannot originate. He builds by patterns that he can see. So, in this council, we must crave out patterns for the coming age, and we must formulate the gnosis of the empire of the soul, which rests on 7. Each sage, in turn, shall form a postulate, and these shall be a basis of the creeds of men, until the perfect age shall come. Then Mengski wrote the first. All things are thought. All life is thought activity. The multitudes of beings are but phases of one great thought made manifest. Lo, Allah is thought, and thought is Allah. Then Vidyapati wrote the second postulate. Eternal thought is one. In essence, it is 2, intelligence and force. And when they breathe, a child is born. This child is love. And thus the triune Allah stands forth, whom men call Father, Mother, Son. This triune Allah is one, but like the one of light. In essence, he is 7. And when the triune Allah breathes forth, 10 seen spirits stand before his face. These are the creative attributes. Men call them lesser gods, and in their image they made the man. And Casper wrote the third. Man was a thought of Allah formed in the image of the septenate, clothed in the substance of soul, and his desires were strong. He sought to manifest on every plane of life, and for himself he made a body of the ethers of the earthly forms, and so he descended to the plane of earth. In this descent, he lost his birthright, lost his harmony with Allah, made discordant and all the notes of life. In harmony and evil are the same, so evil is the handwork of man. Ashbina wrote the fourth. Seeds do not germinate in light. They do not grow until they find the soil and hide themselves away from light. Man was evolved a seed of everlasting life, but in the ethers of the triune Allah, the light was far too great for seeds to grow. And so man sought the soil of carnal life, and in the darksomeness of earth, he found a place where he could germinate and grow. The seed has taken root and grown full well. The tree of life is rising from the soul of earthly things, and under natural law is reaching up to perfect form. There is no supernatural acts of Allah to lift a man from carnal life to spirit blessedness. He grows as grows the plant, and in due time is perfected. The quality of the soul that makes it possible for man to rise to spirit life is purity. Islam. Chapter 10. If anything needs anything reread, let me know.
You said that was 4? There's 4 there, you said? Can you just read 4?
10, chapter 10.
No, like 4 different sages.
Yeah, Vidyapati, Mengsti, Casper, and Ashbina.
There's like the 4, like detectives in the 4 corners of the earth, something like that, right?
Well, it's the sages from chapter 8. Sages from chapter 8. So there's also Philo, Apollo, and Athena. Ashbina, Casper, Mengsti, Vidyapati, Philo, Apollo. So the idea is everything's based in the 7, so that you could look at it like the different energy centers talking to you, and then when they say the 10. And then all these ones are 1, which then make the 7 again. Right? And then that would be tree of life or Kabbalah or whatever.
Universe is mental.
Man is not far enough advanced to live by faith. He cannot comprehend the things his eyes see not. Which is going back again to the lessons that are going within. Like you said, everything's mental.
Even the story that I just mentioned with Melchizedek and
Musa,
because Musa, according to the story, believed Moses that he was the only one that had godly knowledge, because according to the teachings, God spoke to him directly. And so when he found out that there was this other person, so he went seeking after Melchizedek. So when he looked, he could recognize that, hey, he has knowledge from Allah. So he asked Melchizedek, can I travel with you so that I may learn from you? And I smiled when you read that verse, because what Melchizedek said to him. He said, is it cognizant that the finite will be able to comprehend the infinite? It's not cognizant. That's that. It just doesn't happen. And even we see this, happen once. This round. The finite phenomenon. And even in the whole situation that's going on right now, they talk about what the evil that's created by man. Just weeks ago, let's say weeks, not even months, there was the big push to once all the blame. They wanted to blame and to stigmatize Muslims. They had terrorists, we're going to get the terrorists. Okay, so now we've been attacked. The whole world been attacked. You haven't heard anything about getting no terrorists. You haven't heard mandatory wearing masks, mandatory everything, but you haven't heard about any mandatory investigations. You have to hold anybody responsible or accountable for what happened. You just haven't, so you haven't heard of this Department of Homeland Security. What happened to them? You haven't heard them in the past 5-6 months since this whole COVID thing. So what happened to all these people? it tells you that this whole thing is a man-made evil that has been put again upon mankind.
But mankind.
All the people that were dying of heart disease and cancer, nobody's dying of these things. They're all dying of COVID all of a sudden. These great big numbers.
790-something thousand
It's nonsense. It's pure nonsense, but you know, it's a plan. They got a plan.
It's a plan.
Yeah, because man is not far enough advanced to live by faith.
Right.
You have faith, nothing's out there, right? He is yet a child, and during all the coming age must be taught by pictures, symbols, rites, and forms. That's everything that they're getting from TV or whatever, telling them what's going on in the world. And that's all they know, what's going on in the world from the news. News telling them something.
Because they don't go and do actual research on it.
No actual research, studying, you know what I mean, gaining information. You know? Excuse me. Got some over there? What's all the dish one?
Maybe some level
There's another chair over there. Or just sit over there, right? Or two chambers line up door.
The age we enter
How many people have signed, been signing that?
is the preparation age. The age we enter is the preparation age. And all the schools must be designed in a simple way that men may comprehend. Ain't nothing more simple than you're not Negro, black, colored. Anything else is some advanced information. The basis, the easiest way to get man from the low to the high is you're not Negro, black, colored, which is the low, and the higher self is that we have nationality with Moors, we have a culture, ancestry. Then once you start going there, you realize how much, right? And again, like we're saying from earlier, the effort that goes into knowing about your nationality and birthrights. Right?
Wow.
Again, to stress on what Moko was saying, all things are thought. All life is thought activity. The multitudes of beings are but phases of one great thought made manifest. Lo, Allah is thought, and thought is Allah. Allah is thought, and thought is Allah. Eternal thought is one. In essence, it is two, intelligence and force. And when they breathe, a child is born. This child is love. And so the idea of love being the first principle, and us having to push that as an ideal is because it's really a child. It must be nurtured. It must be cared for. It must be looked at as delicate and treated a certain way. But the foundation of that, the parents of that, is intelligence and force. Right? And thus the triune Allah stands forth, whom men call Father, Mother, Son. And all these things that Noble Jawali presented was cracking every code. Right? Bringing matriarch back, that this is really supposed to be Father, Son, Holy Ghost, or whatever, if it's according to the scriptures or whatever, and the word of God or whatever like that. But he's telling you Father, Mother, Son, off the top. And the whole thing about Holy Ghost and whatever and all that. Right? Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, that's just the long word that you use about the child and stuff, and this is the first principle of first love. So if we spell the word love backwards, we will get involved. So it's a root word of something.
Yeah.
We will still evolve. I mean, you evolve, you bring up that child, you evolve them into, basically you scout them into whatever you want. So you're there, God, you're there creating, you evolutionize. Yeah, I mean, it's evolution. So that's what the love means, to evolve that child. Because it's basically when you're going back. I'm not like trying to teach anything, but I'm just what I know. And,
oh, Brother Samuel, there's one over here. There's a check, there's one seat over here. If you want to come over here.
so what I was saying, like everybody uses certain words so loosely in the English language. It's like the F word.
Yeah.
It has one root meaning.
Mhm.
So when everyone's using love so loosely, I love this, I love that, and what is the true meaning?
Yeah.
True meaning.
But again, which is why it's when we're looking at what it is, it's also hinged on 4 other principles, right? So with us, it's been so loose, right, that there had to be things after it in order to give it back the energy that it needs for it to really be what it is. So like even when they're talking about they were talking about and purity in heart became a myth. The people were enslaved, right? Jawali said, if you want to keep your heart pure, drink water. That's it. You want to have a pure heart? Drink water. Right? Same thing with the love. Now, well, yeah, if you're going to talk love, then you have to talk truth. You have to talk peace. You have to talk freedom. You have to talk justice, because love doesn't stand alone anymore in that sense, right? Because there's a lot more things going on, and again, like they're saying, it's the time where schools have to be designed in a simple form, because the people out there are enslaved and they're not going to get it advanced. They're not going to get it. That's why we say, if you can't convince them that they're not Negro, black, colored, there's no more conversation about this and why we wear fezzes and all that. Ain't nothing to talk about.
Also, when you talk about love, you got to talk about obeying the laws, because especially when you talk about love for Allah, we cannot love Allah emotionally like human beings love each other. Like you can't have that type of love relationship with Allah. So how do you love Allah? You love Allah through your obedience to the teachings that He sent down to you. What you may receive, another person may not receive, but what He sent to you, you have to be obedient. That's how we love Allah.
And when Triune Allah breathes forth, 10 seen spirits stand before His face. These are creative attributes. Men call them lesser gods, and in their image they made man. Man was a thought of Allah, formed in the image of Septonate, clothed in the substance of soul, and his desires were strong. He sought to manifest on every plane of life, and for himself he made a body of the ethers of the earthy forms, and so he descended to the plane of earth. In this descent, he lost his birthright, lost his harmony with Allah, made discordant all the notes of life. So we're at the place where we had lost the birthright, which is again why Nuju Ali came, giving our stuff back.
And these type of things like these people are doing this is actually a reflection of when it says basically made discordant all the notes of life.
Yeah.
You know, it's discord. That's a whole lot of discord being created. You know, we walk around wearing glasses and all this kind of stuff. Man, don't know what you do.
Yeah.
The child, he just out there playing childish games with the rest of mankind, basically.
Right. Any other thoughts or questions? Feel free to throw those out. So coming into the birthright or the nationality is to regain the birthright that was lost from the fall of us disobeying Allah, not listening to nature, you know what I mean? Doing all these things contrary to what right and morality and all these things are. So we fell. But it's not over. There's opportunity again, right? Which is the importance of this. And then once you gain the birthright, then the harmony with Allah that was lost is now redeemed, and there's no more discordance toward the notes of life. You actually give them honors and embrace that as a reality now. Because it has to be done from the perspective of the individual recognizing it for themselves. That's what we say, arm, leg, arm, head. Allah and man are one. And Allah, as soon as Allah and man become separate, you already know that you fell again.
That's right. And if your heart not clean and pure, you can't reach it. You can't reach out. Okay.
Seeds do not germinate in light. They do not grow until they find the soil and hide themselves away from the light. Right? So us being these high vibratory beings, and then presenting this to our people is light on the roaches or whatever. They're not trying to hang around to know anything with regard to this, right? So they do not grow until they find the soil and hide themselves away from the light. So we can't do it for them. We can't be the saviors of our family, and we know that we're Moors, we're going to save everybody because we know that we're Moors. No, you're probably not going to do that. It's probably not going to go like that. More likely, it's probably going to be you.
Remember Bob Marley? He said, only you can save yourself.
Only you.
Emancipation is us.
Only you could save yourself from mental slavery. Man was evolved a seed of everlasting life, but in the ethers of the triune Allah, the light was far too great for seeds to grow. And so man sought the soil of carnal life. And in the darkness, in the darksomeness of earth, he found a place where he could germinate and grow. So we always say,
Yes.
that's why they have their apron, because this is that's that carnal place where they go, and then by the time they get to 33 degrees, then they start rising to these other ones. Right? The man was evolved a seed of everlasting life, but in the ethers of the triune Allah, the light was too great for the seeds to grow. And so man sought the soil of carnal life. So anything under a heart chakra is the carnal life. And the duty is to raise from the carnal life to from Allah and man. And then if you drink water to keep your heart clear, so you could stay here. Because the more you get up, when you fall, it's not going to be the same thing to get out of that. You have double work to do now by falling. And with our people, it's constant here for them. Right? But remember, not that it's negative, because these people are ruling the world with this. Remember, this is the apron. So they're ruling with this. In a fraudulent position and all of that. Not calling themselves republic and whatever. They're still ruling. Not following the laws of nature or whatever, they're still ruling. How? Because everybody's also gravitating here. Once the people raise the vibration to here, then these people don't exist. But you're not going to get through this without the birthright, which is the reason why they're stuck here. Because they understood the truth about their birthright, they automatically go to the heart chakra.
Chapter 1 was right. So what's a word that man has factored himself that can't be explained?
Cannot be told in words. Right, so the carnal, the base regions is the darksomeness of earth that man found a place where he could germinate and grow. So it's about evolving to these. Like you have to evolve to these. Because the purpose of, and remember, we're talking about, these are the lessons that were taken from what Noble Juali brought and then put in the attic chamber when the corruption of the temple happened. So that the people would only have the Quran lessons and that's it. Because this is supposed to be after the Quran lessons or with the Quran lessons. You can't have the secret mysteries of the silent brotherhood without the Holy Quran. Because both of them are relative information. That's why all the hater people would always tell you Aquarian gospel and onto the I grant. And Noble Juali stole the stuff from some Europeans or whatever. Right? When this was really information about raising from the carnal self into the higher self through the personage or the, because remember they're talking about men only learn through forms and symbols, rites or whatever. So that picture of Jesus that men are supposed to learn from is this lesson, not walk on water and the Son of God and all that. None of that stuff. It's about man realizing that they're Jesus.
That's right.
You know, Jesus guy, and you're not Jesus too, right? Okay. So it's all about getting to alignment.
And it's interesting that carnal, the root word of carnal means meat. And so,
Yes, what fish?
Flesh.
yeah, you talk about some people eat chili, and they eat something called chili con carne, chili with meat. And that's the lower vibration, you know. When we first reformed, we reformed just, you know, as the thought of Allah. We didn't have the flesh. We didn't have any of that stuff,
Right.
you know. And this is how far we've fallen. And then again, they talk about how you are what you eat as well, too, you know.
Yep. Right, and then the carnal, they also call root. Root, R-O-O-T. Right? And so man sought the soil of carnal life, and in darksomeness of earth, he found a place where he could germinate and grow. The seed has taken root and grown full well. The tree of life, again going back to Kabbalah or whatever, so then you have these the tree of life is rising from the soil of earthly things, and under natural law is reaching up to perfect form. So under the laws of nature, once you put the seed, the plant is only going to grow one way. The plant growing is this. And then by the time you get there, you got the blossoming and stuff and all that. Right? And then the higher self is also the Son of Man, which is what that plant's reaching for as it grows. Right? And all of it, right? So they say tree of life, and then people don't relate, oh yeah, tree outside is really the chakra system. Right? And branches and all that, leaves and all that stuff is the bodies and the vein system and all that. Because that's nature, then that's Allah. Allah is making that. Right? Allah is making it do what it's supposed to do. There are no supernatural acts of Allah to lift man from carnal life to spirit blessedness. There's nothing supernatural. There's no spaced out anything that somebody's going to really give you some mushroom or whatever to make you reach your higher self. It might be a tease of what it is, for real. But eventually the mushroom is going to wear off. And you're going to be right back into the carnal self again. And then worse now, because now you need 5 bags of shrooms to get to where you just left from. Right? He grows and grows. He grows as grows the plant, and in due time is perfected. The quality of soul that makes it possible for man to rise to spirit life is purity. The quality of soul that makes it possible for man to rise to spirit life is purity. There's no purity, then there's no rising of anything going on. Right? There has to be the aspect of recognizing the delicacies of the natural order of things, and realizing how important it is so for us to be able to get to that higher evolutionary place or space. It has to be man recognizing, right? Self has to recognize. This is why they have the ritual of mirror rituals, and you know, in order to inspire the higher self or whatever like that, do candle rituals with mirrors, meditation rituals with mirrors, with candles, with certain scents or whatever, in order to raise the energy to the place where you're supposed to be for the evolution. Because the evolution is going to happen with you or without you. You're either going to get it here in this life, or after you leave the flesh, you'll get it. But at that point, you're probably going to, incarnate here or something else. And Drew Ali said, if you don't leave here right this time, you might not even come back here in human flesh. What? Yeah, downstairs. Right? And then what are you coming back as if you're not coming back here as human? Right? And then certain teachers, they say that they're not eating certain animals because that might be their ancestors or whatever.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like you say that purity, and this is just like a general thing, because a lot of people think, well, my own feeling is what purity is. It's just not being certain, like you said, certain flesh, an ancestor, right? So, what would that be, body and mind, or just when you mentioned that part?
Yeah, I mean,
is that a requirement, like body, physical and mental, like together?
If we're here, yeah, because we're here. So being that we're in the body, there should be some type of bodily evolution, because that's automatically going to happen once the mind evolves, right? Like you turn on certain things when you start evolving in your thought processing. Your thoughts change. You might, for example, you might realize that, when you're on your diet and you're drinking your herbs, there's certain things with the body that are different, right? That's because of the actual thing that you're taking and your thoughts activating it. Not you're taking the thing and then that's how it's working. So if the mind's not in the place to comprehend what it is, just like when they say the shamans took the ayahuasca and then the ayahuasca told the shaman took the ayahuasca because the ayahuasca made him hear the plant tell him what it is. Right?
Yeah.
So that concept you're talking about with the certain ancestors and certain animals and stuff, that's perception.
I got that from some Buddhist teachings.
Well, it depends on the teacher.
Yeah. The school of thought.
As far as that's what we go back, just past it right now.
Yeah.
When he was using the Barata, when Barata brought that same.
The same thing about
If we're in this type of consciousness, which is in the physical form.
So you want to put it up? Read
the highest level of consciousness somewhat in this physical form.
Yeah.
We're the most powerful as far as
as far as the
beings. So
beings,
the concept is that you can't digress to something less than what we were. If we're going to transcend and if we're going to make a transition, coming back as this, or same thing, or a greater being, not coming back as an animal.
You got it?
Yeah, well, looking for something else.
That was something else? Okay.
Right up. Yeah.
Yeah.
He says, it's Yeshua and Barata together, they read the sacred books. You want to read the whole thing, or?
Yeah, we're good, we're good.
Islam.
Islam.
Among the Buddhist priests was one who saw lofty wisdom in the words that Yeshua spoke. It was Barata Arabo. Together, Yeshua and Barata read the Jewish Psalms and prophets, read the Vedas, the Avesta, and the wisdom of Gautama. And as they read and talked about possibilities of man, Barata said, man is the marvel of the universe. He is the part of everything, for he has been a living thing on every plane of life. Time was when man was not. And then he was a bit of formless substance in mold of time, and then a protoplasm. By universal law, all things tend to an upward state of perfectness. The protoplasm evolved, becoming worm, then reptile, bird, and beast, and then at last it reached the form of man. Now, man himself is mind, and mind is here to gain perfection by the spirit. And mind is often manifest in fleshly form, and in the form best suited to its growth. So mind may manifest as worm, or bird, or beast, or man. The time will come when everything of life will be evolved unto the state of perfect man. And after man is man in perfectness, he will evolve to higher forms of life. And Yahshua said, Barata Arabo, who taught you this? That mind, which is the man, may manifest in flesh of beast, or bird, or creeping thing. Barata said, from times which man remembers not, our priests have told us so, and so we know. And Yahshua said, enlightened Arabo, are you a mastermind and do not know that man knows not by being told? Man may believe what others say, but thus he never knows. If man would know, he must himself be what he knows. Do you remember, Arabo, when you were ape, or bird, or worm? Now, if you have no better proving of your plea than that the priests have told you so, you do not know, you simply jest. Regard not then what any man has said. Let us forget the flesh and go with mind into the land of fleshless things. Mind never does forget. And backward through the ages, masterminds can trace themselves, and thus they know. Time never was when man existed. That which begins will have an end. If a man was not, the time will come when he will not exist. From Allah's own record, book we read, the triune Allah breathed forth and stood 7 spirits before his face. The Hebrews call these 7 spirits Elohim. And these are they who in their boundless power created everything that is or was. The spirits of the triune Allah moved on the face of boundless space, and 7 others, and every other had its form of life. These forms of life were but thought of Allah, clothed in substance of their ether planes. Men call these planes the planes of protoplasm, of earth, of plant, of beast, of man, of angel, and of cherubim. The planes, with all their teeming thoughts of Allah, are never seen by eyes of man in flesh. They are composed of substance too far fine for fleshly eyes to see, and still they constitute the soul of things. And with the eyes of soul, all creatures see ether planes and all forms of life. Because all forms of life on every plane are thoughts of Allah. All creatures think, and every creature is possessed of will,
and in its measure has the power to choose. And in their native plains, all creatures are supplied with nourishment from the ethers of their plains. And so it was with every living thing until the will became a sluggish will, and then the ethers of the protoplasm, the earth, the plant, the beast, the man began to vibrate very slow. That's what you're talking about this now. When you said we weren't in this form, we were in a different form, we evolved into the what? We're vibrating at a slower rate right now, that's why you can see the matter. The ethers all became more dense, and all the creatures of these plains were clothed with coarser garbs of flesh, which man can see. And thus this coarser manifest, which man called physical, appeared. And this is what is called the fall of man. That's who they were just saying. But man fell not alone, for protoplasm and earth and plants and beasts were all included in the fall. The angels and the cherubim fell not. Their wills were ever strong. And so they held the ethers of their planes in harmony with Allah. Now, when the ether reached the rate of atmosphere, and all the creatures of these planes must get their food from atmosphere, the conflict came. And that which the finite man called survival of the best became a lot. Survival of the fittest, right? Became a lot. The stronger ate the bodies of the weaker manifest, and here is where the carnal law of evolution had its rise. And now man, in his utter shamelessness, strikes down and eats the beast consumes the plant thrives on the earth absorbs the protoplasm. In yonder kingdom of the soul, which carnal evolution is not known, and the great work of masterminds is to restore the heritage of man, to bring him back to his estate that he has lost, when he again will live upon the ethers of his native plane. The thoughts of Allah change not. The manifest of life on every plane unfold into perfection of their kind. And as the thought of Allah can never die, there is no death to any being of the seven ethers of the seven spirits of the triune Allah. And so an earth is never plant. A beast or bird or creeping thing is never man. And man is not, and cannot be a beast or a bird or creeping thing. The time will come when all these seven manifests will be absorbed, and man and beast and plant and earth and protoplasm will be redeemed. Baraka was amazed. The wisdom of the Jewish sage was a revelation unto it. Now Vidyapati, 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 whatever. I like Vidyapati. Now Vidyapati, wisest of the Indian sages, chief of temple, Kapavista heard Baraka speak and Yahshua of the origin of man, and heard the answer of the Hebrew prophets, and he said, "You priests of Kapavistu, hear me speak. We stand today upon a crest of time. 6 times ago, a master soul was born who gave a glorious light to man, and now a master sage stands here in the temple of Kapavistu. The Hebrew prophet is the rising star of wisdom, deified. He brings to us a knowledge of the secrets. I don't think it's supposed to be that. So the secret things of Allah. It's 2 S's in it. Verse 3, it says, brings us a knowledge of the secrets things of Allah.
That was probably a double S.
Chapter 11, verse 3.
The Hebrew prophet is the rising star of wisdom, deified. He brings to us a knowledge of the secret things of Allah, and all the world will hear his words, will heed his words, and glorify his name. The priests of temple Kapavistu stay Be still and listen when he speaks. He is the living oracle of Allah. And all the priests gave thanks and praised the Buddha of enlightenment. Islam.
Yeah, yeah, another chapter you're looking at?
Sure. It was me and my uncle were talking about something a few days ago, and then the topic of I don't know why how it came up, but it was the different attributes or the way we see Allah, and then I referenced this chapter, and I said I would read it. I think it's chapter.
Yeah, we got that.
Chapter 5.
Is it XX?
No, this text.
10, yeah.
Chapter 10, page 30 in the smaller Quran. So this one is Yahshua spoke on the unity of Allah and man to the Hindus. Benares is the sacred city of the Brahmins. And in Benares, Yahshua taught. Udraka was his host. Udraka made a feast in honor of his guests, and many high-born Hindu priests and scribes were there. And Yahshua said to them with much delight, I speak to you concerning life, the brotherhood of life. The universal Allah is one, yet he is more than one. All things are one. By the sweet breath of Allah, all life is bound in one. So if you touch a fiber of a living thing, you send a thrill from the center to the outer bound of life. And when you crush beneath your foot the meanest worm, you shake the throne of Allah and cause the sword of life to tremble in its sheath. The birds sing out its song for men, and men vibrate in unison to help it sing. The ant constructs her home, the bee its sheltering combs, the spider weaves her web, and flowers breathe to them a spirit in their sweet perfume that gives them strength to toil. Now men and birds and beasts and creeping things are deities, made flesh. And how dare men kill anything? It is cruelty that makes the world awry. And men have learned that when they harm a living thing, they harm themselves. They surely will not kill. When men have learned that they harm a living thing, or that when they harm a living thing, they harm themselves, they surely will not kill, nor cause a thing that Allah has made to suffer pain. A lawyer said, I prayed to Yahshua, tell who is this Allah you speak about? Where are his priests, his temples, and his shrines? And Yahshua said, the Allah I speak about is everywhere. He cannot be compassed with walls, nor hedged about with bounds of any kind. All people worship Allah, the one, but all the people see him not alike. The universal Allah is wisdom, will, and love. All men see not the triune Allah. One sees him as Allah of might, another as Allah of thought, another as Allah of love. A man's ideals is his God, and so, as man unfolds, his God unfolds. Man's God today, tomorrow is not God. The nations of the earth see Allah from different points of view, and so he does not seem the same to everyone. Man names a part of Allah he sees, and this to him is all of Allah. And every nation sees a part of Allah, and every nation has a name for Allah. The Brahmins call him Parabrahm. In Egypt, he is Thoth, and Zeus is his name in Greece. Jehovah is his Hebrew name, but everywhere he is the causeless cause, the rootless root from which all things have grown. When men are afraid of Allah and take him for a foe, they dress up other men in fancy garbs and call them priests, and charge them to restrain the wrath of Allah by prayers and when they fail to win his favor by their prayers, to buy him off with sacrifice of animals or birds. When man sees Allah as one with him, says the Father, but we know that it's a feminine energy too, so as Father, Mother Allah, he needs no middleman, no priest to intercede. He goes straight up to him and says, my Father God Allah, and then he lays his hand in Allah's own hand, and all is well. And this is Allah. You are each one a priest, just for yourself, and sacrifice of blood Allah does not want. Just give your life in sacrificial service to all of life, and Allah is pleased. When Yahshua had thus said, he stood aside. The people were amazed, but strove among themselves. Some said, he's inspired by holy ground. The others said, he's insane. And others said, he's obsessed. He speaks as devils speak. But Yahshua tarried not. Among the guests was one, a tiller of the soil, a generous soul, a seeker of truth, who loved the words that Yahshua spoke. And Yahshua went with him and in his own abode.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Em.
So, Kyrie said that the last few
The last passage there?
last couple sentences about
Insane, obsessed, before that.
Sorry.
Not the sacrifice, yeah?
oh yeah, not to sacrifice the animals.
So there's the first part when I stand up.
I think she doesn't know. So not to sacrifice the animals and the whole blood part of it. So in the Bible days and stuff like that, they use that. When Moses used to sacrifice these animals, sacrifice and stuff. So basically, that's what that is talking about. They ended that.
Pretty much. So
They
like,
ended that.
as far as my understanding of what was going on in Bible interpretation, like they were good, but whatever they had wasn't good enough. So like, okay, just you direct link to the thing is not good enough. Okay, go make a golden calf. Go, you guys want a king? Okay, Saul's gonna come for you guys. Saul's the first king.
That's what it's
They never had that before. It was just direct. But now you guys want somebody like the one is not good enough, so I'm gonna give you somebody, a mediator in between you and the one. Since you guys don't have enough sense or power within you to activate your higher chakras or your higher self to know that I'm one with you regardless. Like nothing else is needed. So you know what? Start killing animals. Start doing this. That was the carnals. That had nothing to do with the Most High.
So now with their Trinity that they're trying to bring in and stuff like that they say happens stuff, they brought Jesus as that representation, not to kill the animal. You go to Jesus now to get the God, right? Which God is now right.
Yeah.
But really and truly, what that is eat the flesh, drink the blood. It's cannibalism. It's not really.
It's like really good stuff. So originating back to everyone. That's why everyone's consciousness is being open and everything is being revealed right now.
Yes. Aquarius time, right?
Yeah.
When he says the outpouring, look for the pouring. Like he told his disciples, and they thought it was something physical. They thought he'd be walking somewhere looking for a man with a pitcher pouring it out, but he just meant for the time of Aquarius. But if you look at the sign, the symbol for Aquarius, it's the water bear, right? Pouring out water in the pitcher. So it's a time of revelation where nothing could be concealed. Really.
Exactly. Things being revealed right now.
And that's why they want us to wear vests and get chips. Because they don't want us to go wear gloves, you know?
And they want us to stay inside.
Yes.
Because the rebirth, well, it's the same, but it's the rebirth of a new sun. It's a new sun. That's what the whole thing was. It's a sun. It's a birth of a new sun that's here.
It's a physically new sun. It's called the black sun. That's why the earth is going through so much birth pains, water floods everywhere. It's just like a woman. The woman's giving birth. There's water, everything. That's what's happening in this earth. I'm not trying to convince it, but you have open mind. They're straight. What if?
What is going to the sun?
Straight.
Verse 14, the universal Allah is wisdom, will, and love. All men see not the triune Allah. One sees him as Allah of might, another as Allah of thought, another as Allah of love. A man's ideal is his God and soul. As man unfolds, his God unfolds. Man's God today, tomorrow is not God. So going back to all these external things that we're looking at when really it's supposed to be just looking within.
And that's like anything that we give our power to more than things that maybe we should be putting our energy into, right? And then when we're done with that, now tomorrow it's something new. That's what that statement means. It don't mean actually the one you're worshiping like as some spiritual energy they're talking about things that we give value and put on that level and say this is our God. Yeah. It's your sneakers, your fact like the one weed every day, whatever it is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But once we're done with that, we're gonna find a new substitute.
Yeah.
A lot of people's God is their phone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the new, that's the God right now. That's the God right now.
Smart phone. It's smart.
Smart.
Very, very smart.
You don't use it, it's not smart. You don't turn on TV, it's not smart. But yeah, I'm not
verse 20, when men afraid of Allah and take him for a foe, they dress up other men in fancy garbs and call them priests. To go back to the same middleman thing. You know? So that's the priest. The priest is the guy who's playing the middleman, like you have to go through him to get to God. Right? Really, that's because of honor of mother, not because a man in a dress.
But we were doing some of that stuff from time.
Yeah, with the hair and certain things.
What you're doing when you're wearing the dress.
When man sees Allah as one with him, as Father Allah, he needs no middleman, no priest to intercede. He goes straight up to him and says, "My Father God Allah," and then he lays his hands in Allah's own hand, and all is well. And this is Allah. You are each one a priest, just for yourself, and sacrifice of blood Allah does not want. Just give your life in sacrificial service to the all of life, and Allah is pleased. And again, going back to the whole idea of the simplicity, simplicity of it. You want God to be happy or whatever, just do sacrificial service to Allah, and everything will be all right. You know, like Brother Omar was talking about earlier, with once you love your job, it's not work. It's like that. You do that for 100 hours a day, it's not even going to matter. I love doing this. Same thing with honors to Allah. Your tree, oh, thank you Allah for that tree because shade was good or whatever. You know?
In other words, even though they're killing other animals to sacrifice for Allah, that's like a big thing you commit, like a crime you commit.
Yeah.
Alone, just to kill it before you go burn it. So that's
But then, like we were saying in the verse before, you step on an ant, you shake the throne of Allah. So what happens when you cut a goat head off or whatever like that? Well, when you put a cow on the altar, you know what I mean? If you step on an ant, and Allah's like, oh, right? Like, what, yeah, you know?
And then that kind of brings into the area of halal killing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another priest. I'm gonna say a few words on this cow, but it's all kosher now.
Everything's good.
Even the process. When they're taking the animal's life, they have to make sure that the animal doesn't feel any fear when it's dying. That's supposed to be technically. Because if it's fear, then the meat gets tainted supposedly. And so it has to be such a gentle mercy type of killing where there's no fear.
Where they're rubbing the back and all that before they massage their feet.
So you know it's bullshit, right?
But it's kosher.
The injection.
Halal.
Make a life that's a lot of chicken burgers or chicken.
Oh, they have them for you.
In North America, Muslim community is getting way bigger, so you got to cater.
Yeah.
Everything halal, like, you know. In my grocery store, there's a regular meat section and it's
Halal section, yeah. They never used to have that. That's for sure.
Halal's always in there. Muslims always in
there. Yeah. Open up the floor if anybody has any questions. You can ask those right now.
What's the name of this? Do you know the name of this more in the white term? Yeah.
That's Josiah Ford. Josiah Ford, he was one of the Moorish Zionist temple of the Moorish Jews.
And on YouTube, and I saw his picture with this European from the, one of those metaphysicians from back in the day, Neville Goddard. And he's really big now. He's made, he's been gone for quite a few years, but there's a YouTube video with him talking about where he got his knowledge from, and it was from an Ethiopian mystic. And there's a picture of
because the whole Ethiopian connection is because they got invited to Haile Selassie's coronation.
Okay.
Back then.
Yeah.
Right. So there's always a tie with them to like a deep connection to Ethiopia, even though they were over here. Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Josiah Ford and the Moorish, the Zionist Jews. Yeah. So in that one, he has the turban, but at the top, there's the fez, there's the tassel of the fez just sticking out at the top.
It's like mine or
Yeah.
You don't see the fez really.
Right. At the top, there's a little, you can see the little tassel sticking out. So you could do your research on the Moorish Zionist Jews. They're still around. They're still around today.
I think I'll send him a message and make him know who it is.
Yeah.
Because he was, well, I don't know if it's just, it has to be, because he's got this picture right next to Neville Goddard, but he's calling him Abdullah.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently the relationship that he had with, unless they're just using his picture, I don't know. Yeah. But he claims that it was this Ethiopian mystic by the name of Abdullah who was, educating him on all of this metaphysics and spiritualism and whatnot.
And that could also be the whole detaching from the Moors perspective by saying Ethiopian mystic.
Right.
When
exactly.
There ain't no such thing as Negro, black, colored Ethiopian.
Yes.
And then he's more Zionist Jews.
Yeah.
Deuce Muhammad Ali was with them.
Yeah.
Noble Jew Ali was down with them. So it's not like they don't know and would be talking like that.
Yeah.
That could be modern talk. That
Well, exactly.
this is just what we call him. You know what I mean? Or it could be like Drew Ali had Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, and he knows him by a different title.
Yeah.
By the same token, if they don't use his name and just say Abdullah in the Arabic language, that just means a servant of Allah.
Yeah.
That's all that
means.
Yeah. Very good. As soon as that came up, I said, wait a second. I know
he's in the
that,
temple.
Yeah.
Any questions at all? Any subject matter? It doesn't have to be what we talked about today. That is good. Any questions? Anything good? So you made it.
That's a change.
Okay, all right. Just love, Morris. Well, our next session is next week. You know the address offhand for the spot? Confederation Park, near the what's the water? Yeah, just the water. The water spot.
So Hamilton next week?
Yeah. Hamilton next week. We're looking at get out there probably for 10:30.
Yeah.
So we could start up by 11 and have a little time out there. They have they also have a park out there too. So bring the children. They got somewhere that they can go run around. You burn them up for some hours. They have a little beachfront, water. So it should be all right.
585 Van Wagner's Road or Van Wagner's Beach Road. So 585 Van Wagner's Beach Road.
So yeah.
We got two questions to the students.
Oh, all right. Okay. Somebody had a question in the chat about starting up a temple, because they're noticing activity picking up where they're at. One of the things that we impress on people coming into this is think of it as a think tank. Think of it as a place for you to meet with people who are in your mindset, so you can put your minds together and figure out some stuff. When you start getting into temples and things like that, and you start getting into titles, and then you start getting into people's ego and stuff like that, and you guys want to do this and do that, you want to be the number one of the whatever, and it creates something that you're gonna have to deal with later. So we usually push people to do some type of study group or something like that, some type of think tank where you can get together with people who are on your mind frame and exchange energy that way, because that's really what is going to get the ball rolling, not having a building called a certain thing or some guys with titles or whatever. It's really about the minds of the people. But yeah, there were some questions.
You guys want to ask the question yourself, or you want me to ask for you? You guys know what you want to know?
Why do we have
While we do our prayer, why do we face the east?
So we face the east to acknowledge the foundation, if you will, of the light coming from there. The sun, they say sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So because everything that we do is based in us acquiring light, which light really means knowledge. To generate that power, we face the East. But we know that when we say, you know, Allah, the creator, the ever living force, we know that it's all around us. But we know that what we have came from the East. So it's just acknowledgement for our ancestors due to us having to honor our father and foremothers. So that's why we face these.
That kind of answer for you guys? You guys there? That make sense?
Good question too.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you, man? Did you hear the answer? Does it make sense to you? The answer of it? Why we face the East? You heard a bit of it, right? You got some of it, right? To get the light. That's where the sun rises. So we're trying to connect and get to our light source, be one with our light source.
And most people face East too, right?
Yeah, majority of
Face East,
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Other people face the East for Jerusalem and all that kind of stuff.
Also, there's the mystic connotation of orientation. So the orients is in the east. So for you to orientate to go back to that, like you said, knowledge.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
the light.
Yes.
Face the east.
You remember the second question? No? Okay. It was why is Friday considered the day that man was born? That's a serious one. Why is Friday considered the day that man was born? Anybody could put their input to it, not as grand.
Yeah.
Isn't that the day man was first formed and transitioned?
Departed, yeah. Formed
Why? I
flesh.
want to know why he was born.
Right. So it pretty much goes back. So okay, when during the time of Noble Drew Ali, it was a very religious minded time, and the whole idea of Christianity, if you will, was ruling. So the things that Noble Drew Ali put out was really to attract people to this that were caught up in the religion. So to say man was created in Friday, why? Is because that was the last day. But Saturday is the seventh day. And the seventh day, according to scriptures, no work is getting done. You're supposed to be Sabbath on that day. So it's only right that on the sixth day is when the man would be created in flesh. Because remember, when you go through the Quran, it talks about the protoplasm and the beast and all those are the different stages of creation. So by the time you get to man, it's really Friday based on those things in creation. All right?
If Sunday is the first day, and then sequence of events happen the way they said, then Friday would have been the day
It would be the last day of any type of creating. And the last thing created was us being made manifest.
It's also tied into the scripture about last being first and first being last, because in that overall, tribal thinking or thought, the triune Allah, it was already perceived that there would be all these deceptions that would come from the people who placed themselves before in religion and stuff like that. So it's Sunday, the Christians having that as the first, and then the Sabbath, the Jews having the second, and then the Muslims having Friday as the last. It was all linked into, overcoming that deception where the last should now evolve to be the first.
And
And then
which again goes back to
astrologically too, like with Friday is
Venus,
Venus day, right? So it's a feminine energy day too, like the highest.
Venus is the morning star, right? She brings the sun, so.
Exactly.
Let's say we have a perfect circle on the wall here. We all came into the room and had a perfect circle on the wall. Would any of you guys know where they started that circle?
No. Doesn't have a hand, doesn't have a hand. Yeah, beginning or end.
yeah.
And unless only the person that drew that circle started.
Yeah.
So who was being told? I'm not trying to contradict anything. I'm asking a question too. Who was told that this was the first Eli? What if? That's all I say. Yeah, I get up, I ask myself, what if? And why? Why is the question? It's infinity, because every answer you can always ask. Why? Yeah. That's what it tells, no question. No question. No question. I know.
Too bad.
The mother is from your mother, right? And your mother, the space you came through is a twilight zone, dark space. It's a perfect circle you came. So if you ask that question, you ask the mothers, because you came through mother, which is a perfect circle. So we're a whole, which is where every one of us came from. You're looking at the mother anyway. The answer is Mother Earth. The answer is going to be mother.
Nature is Mother Earth.
Yeah.
So if we're not looking towards nature for our answers,
Yeah, you're probably not gonna get any answers. Yeah. Sure. Any more questions, comments? So once again, next week we're gonna be out near Steel City, Hamilton, for our last, probably one of our last in the park series, and then we have the mother's dinner, and then we have the temple harvest. We also do our autumn dinner, lunch or whatever it's gonna be. But it'll be here. We'll just get some food and be an easy time on that day. All right. Gnarly. No questions? Everybody's good? All right. We'll close out Islam.
Islam.
Everybody sign in.
5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night, by day, His holy prophet, Noble Ali. Islam. Ashir. Oh yeah, we got some books in the back.
still have time.
Yeah, that's the new one right there. Yeah. Islam to all the Moors in the chat. You already know. Peace and love to all. Thanks, Morris. Yeah, yeah, either one. Either one. Yeah, yeah. You got to. You got to. You got to.
No. We have 20, 30 more reaching every week here. What are you talking about? It's not no. It's here. It's real.
That's where it's at.
So,